there. I'm Richard Dolan, CEO of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, and I'm here live with our very dear friend, the founder for the principles behind all things safe, Mr. Stronach himself. And when I say Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs, that means you. Welcome to our webinar. We're delighted that you've joined us. We're grateful that you've parked some time aside so that you can start your business, scale your business, stabilize your business, or just have it succeed more Frank Stronach's way. So with that being said, let's have our friend, your friend, our friend, Frank Stronach, join us now. Frank, good evening, my friend. How are you?
Well, it's great to be here.
Well, it's always good to be with you, my friend. And we have hundreds of people that are now dialing in. They're live. We're going to find out who they are and where they're coming from momentarily. But Frank, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, to stand for the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs, to be able to teach people how to build a business the Stronach way. We just want to say thank you.
Well, it's great to be helpful if somebody wants to start a business, right? So it's nice to go back on your experiences and perhaps give advice.
I love that. Now, I want to just turn to the camera. I want to take a look here. So, folks, if you're on camera, fantastic. If you're not, but listening in, that's okay too. But I want to know who here is a member. If you go to the chat room right down there in the chat, you'll see that little bubble there. I want to take a look and see who's a member. If you're a member, say hello in the chat so we can say hello to you. I see. What's up, Mark Jean? We have a dear friend from Los Angeles tuning in. Say hello to Mark, my friend. Why don't you say hello to Mark?
Oh, hi. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Now, Mark, you don't know this, but he's looking at the TV as though you were there, but it's good to see that you're here. What's up, Christopher? You are a member. We know who you are, Mr. McLeod. It's great to see you, Brenda Sedgwick. It's great to have you. Hello, Nima. Good to see you, my dear friend, all the way in from Edmonton, Alberta. It's good to see you, Sharon. It's good to see you, Christopher. It's good to see Marie Magner. Good to see you. Marie's a dear friend. She's in from, I believe, I want to say Calgary, but it's Alberta. It's the most northern part. They literally have 2 days of summer and there's nothing else there. Isn't that true there, Marie? All right. Let's see who else is here. So for those who are just joining us, what's up, Tony? Good to have you here. He says he met you at the de Havilland's aircraft in 1987, 1988. That's Tony Furtado. He says hello. He's joined us live. Good to see you, Ian Michaels. Good to have you here. Now, for a lot of people that are here from across the country and around the world, you should know that many things about Frank Stronach has been a global phenomenon. I mean, you started Magna International from a room no bigger than likely this studio, and you grew it into 180,000 employees that were occupying well over 400 factory floors from around the world. It's no wonder why you're so celebrated around the world. In the world, Frank, what was your favorite factory that you opened? I know Canada would definitely be the one country you always have a heart in, but what would be the second best country that you really enjoy looking back and opening up?
My favorite one was my first one.
Your favorite one was your first one.
Yeah, they gave me a lift up.
Is that the same?
They gave me confidence.
Is that the same for money? Like your best million was your first million?
Well, call it the most difficult one is always the first million, right? Okay, and then it gets easier.
It gets easier.
If we pass the billion, it gets real easy.
Well, you heard it. You heard it from him now. You heard it from him now. The one and only Frank Stronach. He's an industry titan. I mean, this is not just a man who started from the ground up and went global. At one point in the history of commerce and industry, he was one of the world's largest employers. In fact, you were on track to likely be the single greatest and largest employer had certain mergers and acquisitions occurred.
I guess in the manufacturing, right? There's in sales, et cetera, you might have companies which have more employees, right?
Yeah.
But in manufacturing, it's rare when you go.
Yeah.
But 180,000, yeah.
180,000. I mean, these are great lives. And I mean, when you think about it, friends, Frank didn't just hire people, he turned employees into capitalists. And we'll talk a little bit about that today in this particular session, because it's designed today not to be a lecture, not to be a presentation, but a conversation. So we're going to go live to some of those who are in here to give you the opportunity of sharing a question, perhaps an insight, or just picking the brain of Frank as he looks to me and waits for the questions to come. But why don't we just build the context for why we're here. The Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs, for those who are members, they know. And for those who are new, they would like to learn more. Here's what it's about. As you were the man and the legend behind the theory and philosophy on business, we call that fair enterprise.
Enterprise,
It,
yes.
it gave rise to a number of initiatives. You created the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, which is your vision for the world's first economic charter for Canada. And it's a model that can be emulated around the world. That gave rise to a new kind of association that you then called the New Wave Common Sense Business Association. So if the charter was really the vision, the New Wave Common Sense Business Association was the community. It was the conversation. But the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship is where people get to learn, be taught, and mentored by you. So that if people were inspired, if they were moved, if they were emboldened by your charter, by your fair enterprise thinking, and by a new wave of approaching one's business, the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship is where we get to roll our sleeves up and get mentored by you, our very favorite billionaire. How does that sound, Frank?
Well, the billionaire sounds good, right?
The billionaire,
but anyway,
it does.
You go to stages when you have a business, right? When you have a small business, you got to have a different structure, right? Let's say if you get 20 employees, you got a different structure. We got 100, 500, or 1,000, or 20,000, or 50. You got different structures. But let's start out. Basically, we like to interface with people which like to start out in business, to try to give them some basic advice and give advice maybe to small businesses which want to grow larger, right? So you go to different stages, right? The first thing is where I tell young or would-be entrepreneurs, you sort of, when you've been in your early 20s, you don't really know yourself, right? You got to experiment a bit. You should do a number of things till you find something, what you think, I like that, right? So it's so important that whatever you do, that if you should like it, right? If you like something, you're going to be good in it. And if you put in the extra effort, you could be one of the best. And if you be one of the best, then money is always a byproduct. So that's for would-be entrepreneurs and for people people who are, which are already in business. There's different rules apply or structures, etc., right? So I'd be very happy if somebody has got a question to give an answer about it.
Yeah, one of the questions that I got already early on, and it's so great to have you. If you're just joining us, it's Richard Dolan here, the CEO of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs, and we're joined by its founder, the man and its principle in action, Mr. Frank Stronach, known as a titan, an industrialist, if it were, a man of manufacturing, a billionaire, I'm sure by measures, but I like to call him my friend, and yours too. So Frank, one of the questions I got here from someone that already came in was, there's fatigue. People are feeling tired being in business. Making money today seems like it's just getting harder and harder. I mean, with the geopolitical events, with uncertainty in the world, with the war in the Middle East and others raging on, people feel a little bit overwhelmed. The question comes in from one of our dear members. Frank, have you ever been tired when you were an entrepreneur? And if you were, how did you persevere?
Well, if you get tired, then you're not maybe into the right program or the right products or in the right things what you want to do, right? So you shouldn't think about making money. You should be thinking about making products, right? If you make good products, then money is a byproduct. You always got to see that money is a byproduct.
And one of the observations I've made as I've had the pleasure of being around you for many years is that I see that you're not so much even obsessed with the product. What I've actually noticed that you're obsessed with the problem and solving that problem. So I find that by my own experience, and not to alter your own answer, but my experience of you is that you're always looking to fix something. So maybe people are just not fixing the right problem that they're passionate about. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, I think the key is you should always assess yourself, right? Do you have a problem, And let me put it this way. if in your own life, if things are not right, you should know you got a problem, right? If you don't know you got a problem, you really got a problem, right? Because you got, if something isn't right, you should identify the problem, get rid of it, and go forward and be positive.
That's right. You know, it's not every day, folks. If you're tuning in right now, this is your chance. The entire program is designed for you to ask a question of an entrepreneur, an established businessman, a person who's scaled businesses, gone public, raised much dollars for his own company, but generated billions both in profit and in revenue share with others. If you've got a question, no matter how small or insignificant it might be, or perhaps you just would like to know out of curiosity something about Frank, his experience or history, just type us right now, right there in the chat room. You'll notice that we already are responding to you. And just a big shout out to those who are managing it. We have Ivana in the room, the person who's the chief of communications, our partner in the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. Cynthia also here, the chief of staff for all things Frank Stronach. And the man who's behind production right now is our dear friend, Stephen. And it's great to have them here running the show for us. But another question that just popped in, and Bill, I love that your comment, tired of being the best. Bill said that to you. He's tired of being the best. I love that people are saying this. How do you manage difficult partners? Now, you tell stories of having turned your foreman into partners. Did you ever work with a partner, a foreman that was difficult to work with or tolerate, Frank?
Well, I guess the key is very much you wanna be with balanced people, right? Okay. Usually, if they're balanced, you find an answer, right? Because sometimes it's healthy to when you have people in business, they get different views, etc., right? It's great to discuss, and but if you balanced, you find an answer.
Hmm. You know, some people here, as I'm checking all of our devices, I feel like I'm in the Apollo, the Apollo that just recently went around the moon and back. We have enough equipment here to launch something, including a business, Frank. But some people here is asking the question, what inspired you to turn your first foreman into a partner? Now, I remember by way of story, Frank, that you had an experience with your first employer who you said was a nice man and treated you well. You worked very hard. You did good by him. And he suggested to make you a partner. But in his failure to put it in writing, he really undermined the gesture. And so you went on to not only start your own business, but you turned your first foreman, Herman, into a partner. What inspired you to do that, to turn your coworkers into co-owners?
Yeah, basically, my after I had about 20 people. Yeah, usually I'm saying you go to stages in business. It's an evolutionary process. But anyway, when I had about 20 people, my former, which was my first employees, it was a little different. So I asked him, what's the matter with you, Herman, lately? Well, he said to me, Frank, I'm thinking of starting my own business. So I said, well, that's great too. I sympathize with that. And I said, look, let's talk tomorrow. Maybe we find a better answer than that, right? Because in life, it's always you're looking for better answers, right? So anyway, that evening I was talking to myself, and I said to myself, if that foreman's got to leave me, I know that would stifle my growth. I didn't like that. The next reason I liked even less. If that foreman's got to leave me, I go do all the work myself. I liked that less. And the third reason was, if I hire a foreman and I don't show him how business is run, then I still got to do all the work. And the next reason was, if I hire a foreman and I show him how a business is run, then it's just a question of time before he goes on his own and starts his own business. To make a long story short, the next day I said to Herman, look, Herman, why don't we start a new business together? You own 1/3, I own 2/3. Herman looked at me and said, do you mean it? I said, yes. We went right away to a lawyer, wrote it down, and Herman was working like crazy. That was his factory. He was proud, and he really worked hard. So I've done that with over the next 5 years with 6 more foremen, a similar structure. And after 5 years, I had cash coming out, incredible cash flow.
I think all of us, friends, really enjoy the idea of incredible cash flow. I think I would like to have that as a bumper sticker, maybe even a tattoo one day. I'm so successful. There's
the story goes a little further, right? So
tell me.
So I met the foreman's partners, and then I became sentimental or philosophical in it because I've come to certain stages in my life. You know, I was hungry, not hungry because I wanted to lose weight. I was hungry, but I had no money to buy food, right? And when you go to stages like that, then many things cross your mind. And I said, gee, if I could do something where also the workers could participate and make more monies, right? So yes, I transferred the private company to a public company. I put in a corporate charter, right? The corporate charter basically spelled out with the foremost principle in the economic charter was, what do we do with the profits, right? So 20% of the profits went to the shareholders. Then 10% of the profits went to the workers over and above their wages. 6% went to management. 7% went in the research. Research is the foundation for the future. And 2% went into charity. But when I put in this economic charter at Magna, right, our profits climbed 40% the first year, 100% the second year, and 200% the third year. So basically what I want to get across is, if you share the profits with employees, release an energy of untold proportions, right? Because they are on the front line. They see how we can make things better, right? If they know they get a portion. So that's an amazing thing to do. And that's basically what drives me. I said, look, I think the human charter of rights alone is not sufficient. We have to fortify it with an economic charter of rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies are the basis for democracy itself. Let me put that in a grassroots language, right? Well, all politicians agree, all business people agree, if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. But so if the economy doesn't work, you cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. But we do not talk what drives the economy. The most important subject, we don't talk about that. The economy is driven by three forces: smart managers, hardworking employees, and investors. The message I want to get across loud and clear is, without workers, you can't make a profit. So it's great, dude. That's the basis of an economic charter of rights, right? So that without workers, you can make a profit. And so I'm not preaching to take away from the rich. I'm just preaching we should let workers participate to bake the economic pie, and everybody will get a bigger slice.
I agree.
It's as simple as that.
It is simple. It's a simple one. And I love that because, for a lot of our members here, and if you're just joining us, it's Richard Dolan and Frank Stronach for a Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship live Q&A. That's for you, producing questions, getting answers, and being both coached and mentored by the man himself, Mr. Frank Stronach. Now, I've got a couple of questions. I got my hands full of devices, of course. Omar asked a great question. So did Brenda. And I want to get to Ian Michaels. But the first one that makes the most sense to ask you first is from Brenda Sedgwick. And Sedgwick, that is. I apologize, Brenda. What are the values, she asks, what are the values that you look for in your direct hires that you had made, Frank? In other words, how did you make the choices in hiring? What were the things you looked for? What did you admire most in people that applied to work with you?
Basically, when you start out, when you be younger, you want to start out and work hard, make some money, so that you can live in dignity and help the family, perhaps. And when you get older, then you get a little more philosophical. And the main thing then is, what's the purpose of life, right? What's the purpose of business? So basically, I think it's very important you should have a purpose. And my main purpose is, whatever I do, the first question is always, is it also good for society besides me? Okay, my friends or my family. Okay, so the key question is it also good for society?
Yeah, I love what Brenda asked. One of the things I noticed in working around you and working within the team is that I noticed that you look at people for the skill set they have. You have a very good eye to see the gifts they've got that they've not yet wielded or leveraged. You say that about everybody on our team. But I also noticed that you're one of those people who really believes that there's greatness in people. You always see yourself as offering people, me included, an opportunity to express it, to find it, to be able to leverage it so that two people win when they do discover that gift and its utilization. You, as the employer, and the person that's using it. And that's my personal experience of you, Frank. Moving along, because this is a Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship session live here with Frank Stronach himself. I want to go to Omar, and then I'll go to Ian Michaels. Omar asks the question, Frank, how do we encourage capital to flow back into the Canadian economy in the current socio-economic political framework that actually drives capital's flight? So I think what he's suggesting is that based on just the current environment we're in, politically, economically, money seems to want to leave the country rather than stay in the country. You know something about this, don't you?
Well, I guess money usually flows to the path of least resistance. And so most people, if they have money to a certain degree, they are smart. There are some maybe get a lot of money by luck, but most people got money because they were smart and they followed the economy. And if the structure is that the economy can't function, then the money will leave, or there won't be no reinvestments, right? So you got to really see it's the economy, because if the economy doesn't work, right, then the only thing governments make up with printing money, and then the debt gets bigger and bigger, and the hole gets deeper and deeper, and it's tough to get out of a big hole than a small hole.
Yeah. One of the things I would also comment to our dear friend Omar is that given what we're doing at the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, is that we're mobilizing the economic charter of rights and responsibilities, the vision you have for a greater Canadian financial future. And among many things that you're professing in this new vision for Canada is the removal, the elimination of taxing small businesses. That's number one. Number two is removing the bureaucracies, the overregulation of small businesses. And I think that if you, Omar, and I'm saying that to you, Omar, if you were to investigate a little bit more closely what the Canadian Economic Charter of Rights and Responsibilities means for you, I think you'll be really moved and inspired to not only sign the pledge, but join the conversation to bring that to your constituency, as in the person that's in the political office, to bring their attention to how they can unhinge you. Would you not agree, my dear friend?
Well, again, I come back over and over again. It's the economy. And sometimes you got to look back in history and say, did some people do it right? Or did they define what the problems are, right? The key is to define problems and act, right? For instance, when I look back, maybe, it's not that long ago, maybe 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, we had Winston Churchill, right? The Prime Minister of England, right? Churchill, his later years says, goddamn Parliament, he says, Parliament doesn't work. There's only politicians in Parliament. The mandate of a politician is to be elected and re-elected. So he says the problem is the country is managed by political reasons rather than socioeconomic reasons. So Churchill said, we need a chamber of citizens to balance out the politicians in Parliament. But yes, I absorbed that over and over and over again, and the finally got to find answers, right? I found it maybe too complicated. In regards to Canada, I could say Canada call it small businesses, the chamber of citizens. When we look back, right, it's small business was always the backbone. So we got to see, do we stifle them? Do we, so the key is, Canada did great 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, right? Everybody wanted to come to Canada, and small business was thriving, right? But now the artery of small businesses are blocked with cholesterol, right? We have so much bureaucracy that the economy is at a standstill, right? And so many signs are there, right? One of the biggest signs you can see is about 50 years ago, when the first computers came on the market, the slogan was, when you get one of those computers, you could eliminate the total office floor. Now, when we look around, there's 20 times more office buildings. What do you think they do in there? Okay, there's so much regulation. We got regulators which regulate regulators. So we got to take a look. What can we do? How can we dismantle that, right? In a constructive way, not in a chainsaw way, in a civilized way. We always got to look, what is the problem and what are the solutions? But we totally fail now to define how can the economy flow freely.
My God, this is fire, folks. If this is fire, go in the chat room right now. I want to see a flame. Hit the chat room. I want to see the flame. Go in the chat room. I want to see a flame. I mean, this is what passion looks like. I was already giddy when you said, when I look back only a few years ago, 40, 50, 60 years ago, I'm thinking to myself, you have memory recall of 60 years ago? We're sitting with a titan, an industry leader who sits here before me, 93 years young, and is on fire for standing for a better you, a better business, your entrepreneurial future, and a greater financial life for your family and yours. Frank, I'm just really loving what you're saying here. Look at all these little fire. That's people giving you a lot of love and respect. We appreciate you, Mark and Tony, Brenda, and what's up, Sisha? Good to see you. Good to see you, Ian. And Taras, good to see you. Hey, what's up? Frank Felico's in here as well. Yeah, I want to go to Ian Michaels, as I just saw him there. I see you, Stuart. Ian Michaels had sent in a great question. I want to get to it now to change gears a little bit because he asks a great question. You know, when we look back at the time in which you came to Canada, you only had $200 in your pocket, and there were no Chapters or Indigo. There was no Amazon books. So Ian wants to know, was there a book you ever read, Frank, growing up that really shaped you or influenced you to be the entrepreneur you became?
The book was the experience I experienced in business, in life, right? That's the book, right? I just make notes of it and keep a lot of notes. And from time to time, I look at that and say, well, got to get on the right track.
You got to get on the right track. I mean, my only comment to Ian, if I may, Ian, my recommendation is to get Frank Stronach's book, Magna Man. And it's a great place to start. If you're a member of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, I mean, you might have already received a copy of that, either hard or digital. Write us and let us know if you're a member. But you should read that book. And what it'll also do is open up your palate to understand how Frank Stronach's mind and his business philosophy evolved. Because, Frank, a lot of the books you wrote around greed and around business and life philosophy began to also emerge in your own collection of books. Would you not agree?
Yes, but again, let me come back. What's so important, because we all know that the living standards in Canada over the last 50, 70 years gone down 50 to 70%. Nobody's ringing the alarm bells. So we got to ask ourselves, what do we have to do, right? Because otherwise, the way that what's climbing in Canada now is the debt is climbing, the inputs are climbing, and the bureaucracy is climbing, right? That's like a freight train going down the hill. So we got to say, look, how can we stop that? What is the answer? And the answer is always, we got to do things what drives the economy, that the economy moves, the economy moves, right? So the economy, I'm saying, is driven by small business, right? So in society, when you want to make a change, the timing has to be right? Unfortunately, the timing is that the fridges will be less than half empty. The pain factor will set in, right? Then people will listen, right? And then you need a constituency, right? And the constituency is small business. So basically, I'm saying if small business has always been the backbone, or if we look back 50, 60 years when small business drove, and done so well, and the whole country, all the people did well when small business did well. So we say, look, why don't we should go back and do those things what drove small business at the time, right? So my recommendations are small business should not pay a business tax, because small business wants to grow to a big business, right? In order to do that, they have to hire, maybe buy equipment and hire employees. The government makes more money if the employees pay a wage tax or income tax, right? So the tax system is totally reversed, right? We tax that the small business hardly gets off the ground with already they hit with taxes. So small business should be no business tax, right? Okay, and we gotta get the regulators out of there. So governments have no business to be in small business, right? We gotta get the regulators out of it. And small business always regulated itself over the last 100 years, right? We had wise counsel in regard to the bricklayers, the plumbers, the carpenters. So workplace safety is important, right? The environment is important, ethics. But small business could do that for a fraction. So we gotta set small business free. And the only way to set small business free is join the new wave of Common Sense Business Association. Join, be part of that, because you need a political voice, right? You gotta say to the parliamentarians, look, you don't fix the problem by printing monies.
No.
We got to fix the problem by doing things, making products. Okay, that's the way we can fix the economy. And so if small business has, and I'm saying call it the Chamber of Commerce hasn't raised their hand, but the Independent Business also hasn't really. So really, it needs a new business, a new Common Sense Business Association, right? The new wave. And if you band together, look, you have a huge political voice, and most of all, you can stop the printing of monies in Ottawa over and over and over again. That doesn't work. It gets us deep into the hole.
Yeah, Frank, this is amazing. We're at the halfway mark. For those who are just joining us, it's Richard Dolan, the CEO of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, joined by the man and the principal behind the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, Mr. Frank Stronach himself. Known widely as one of the most celebrated billionaires of our time, employed at its peak 180,000 employees across 400 different factory floors in over 34 countries worldwide. So great to be here with you, Frank. We're getting questions from members. We have guests here who are here for the first time. Welcome. We're so delighted that you chose to be here with us this evening, this afternoon, this morning, depending what time zone you're in. We're getting questions from people. So go into the chat room, ask a question. When else will you have a moment to be live and in person and connected to a living legend like Frank Stronach, a businessman, a philanthropist, a visionary, an author, a celebrated speaker, more importantly, your friend, your mentor inside the next 30 minutes. Frank, a few more questions if you don't mind. One of our dear students had asked the question, when you started hiring people, Frank, when you started growing the business, what came first, the income or the people? What do you recall?
Well, it's smart people like to get a job where they would learn and so they could advance, right? Okay, people which are not that smart, they want to say, I want to get the highest paid monies, right? Okay, so really is, you should always assess, can I learn from that, right? To eventually, because we all should have goals, and the goals are achievable if you go about in the right way, right? Okay, if when you start out, don't make big steps, make smaller steps, right? The bigger steps you make when the ground underneath is more solid, right? So it's very important to take smaller steps, and most of all, If you really want to do well or want to be really great, you got to start at the bottom sometimes, and you follow your instincts, or you follow where you have an affinity for it, right? Because when you have an affinity, that means you like it, and you put in an extra effort. You're gonna be good in it, and if you so with the extra effort, you could be one of the best, right? If you be one of the best, then money is a byproduct.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to that question, for those who are asking, the way I would see it as well is you don't want to be recruiting people unless you're ready to place them. I mean, most people who are looking for jobs want to get that job now. They've got bills to pay, mouths to feed, fridges to fill. So if you want to grow, you've got to put your feelers out and begin to recruit, and perhaps look at and circle those who've got the talent. But you certainly want to have the income to pay them, because you just can't hire people if the business can't afford to, in fact, afford their paychecks. And it brings me to a great next question from our dear friend, Christopher McLeod. What's up, Chris? He asks the question, Frank, any suggestions for entrepreneurs who need to raise money for their business? I mean, especially in this current economic environment. And Chris, by the way, I get what you're saying. It's a very interesting time that's hyper dynamic, super fluid, and ever changing. But he asks, what would you recommend, Frank, for an entrepreneur who needs to raise money for their business today, given the environment they're in? What would you say are the one or two or three things that you'd want them to know?
For an entrepreneur starting out or being in business for a short period of time, I think the key is you should work for somebody, right? And choose a product or a business which would be one of your likings, right? So you work and accumulate some monies, and live very frugal, live very sparingly, right? Okay. When I started out, right, I rented a small room. The shower were out in the hallway, and the toilets were out in the hallway, right? That was I arrived in Toronto with about $200 in 1955. 3 years later, I had $5,000 saved up. 1957, $5,000, you could buy a house or a small farm. So I rented a small building, bought a few used machines on a down payment, and they went in the factories around, and I said, I'm very good in solving problems. If I can't solve the problems, they don't have to pay me. Obviously, I solved problems, because after 1 month, I hired an employee. After 1 year, 10 people. After 2 years, 20. Okay. So it's, you grow that way, right? And so you don't have to borrow a lot of monies, right? Okay. So you can go save some monies, and the key, borrow the money if you got good cash flow, and you can say, look, you can easily pay it back, the loan, right? Okay.
I love your answer. It's organic. It's very true to your brand. Organic meaning, hey, cut back on your expenses, be sensible, live within your means, but more importantly, grow the business and lean in. Chris McLeod, a couple of other suggestions. Maybe do some research. Find out what industry in which might have grants or government support that's available to you. BDC is also a great option. And I understand your issues with raising money. We're not financial advisors, we're not lawyers, we're not accountants, but I certainly would give you this personal advice, which is to research what's already available there to you, and be prudent around maybe tapping into those resources yourself. I trust you would agree with that, Frank. Let's move along. We have got lots of questions coming in. It's so great to have people here leaning in and listening to our very dear friend, Frank Stronach, the founder of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. If you're not a member already, you should hit the link below that Stephen Rochester is about to just put there in the chat room. If you're not a member and you'd really love to have someone you can lean on, someone you can ask questions of, perhaps we could be called a business mentor, a fractional chief growth officer, perhaps just a coaching platform or a place to come to so that you can lean on not just the genius and brilliance, but the historical, incredible track record that of Frank Stronach and his achievements, and the team here that includes a great stable of like-minded people under Frank's tutelage. Please just go to the website there below and you'll learn more on how to become a member, a student, a follower, and dare I say, a mentee of the very great Frank Stronach. So back to the questions, Frank. We have Deanna Wilkinson. What's up, Deanna? Good to have you here, my dear. So she asks, Frank, in real estate, she writes, what separates someone who is just working deals from someone who has built a real sustainable business? What are the key things that need to be in place to make that transition from being just a deal chaser, a deal maker, to running a real business? Do you see the difference? And if so, what would it be?
Well, you try to be good in whatever you think you have an affinity, right? You should specialize in something, and the key is be more than good. Try to be the best, right? So you got start out in a smaller way to be good, right?
Mm.
Okay, do something simple or
Mhm.
do it good. Make a product which is better than anything else, right?
Yeah. I like that. And Frank, if I may add, for some of those who are here and wondering, Richard, how did you become the CEO of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship alongside a team like Stephen, Cynthia, and Ivana? Well, because I remain a student of Frank's. And one of the things I heard Frank share many times, and I want to share it with you in particular, Deanna Wilkinson, is this: find a problem worth solving in your business. One of the things Frank talks about many times is that when he first started off his business, he often won business by walking into them and saying, give me a problem that's worth solving. And if I don't solve it, you don't have to pay me. So when it comes to chasing real estate deals, I would think, what is the deals done for anyways? Look at the problem that you solve in real estate and build a business around the solving of that problem. So that once you do, then you think in terms of scaling it with people, bandwidth, technology, rather than just going from deal to deal. Because when we look at Frank's history, he didn't build parts for cars. He built factories that built parts for cars. So
Built homes.
And he built homes. That's correct.
Real
Financial
estate.
homes. Oh, amazing. It's so great to be here with you.
I didn't answer totally the
Please.
question before, right?
Please.
So real estate, you got to have either you own some land, okay? So for one reason or the other, try to accumulate some, if you got a reasonable job and have an idea how you're going to utilize the land, what kind of houses you would build, right? Okay. Naturally, that there's a little more money is involved, right? So you got the ones which build luxury homes or great homes which serve the working class families, right? There's a lot of varieties you have to do, but whatever it is, do it first class, right? And so there's a lot of working class family homes which are quite well built, right? It might not have marble, it might not have thing here, but still well built. So the key is you got to find a good product for different market or for different situations, right?
I love it.
So you got to figure in this is a great product for family for families, right?
Well said. I'm so glad that
this is a great product if you be richer, right? So that you gotta try to find the niche, right? And say, look, there is maybe a shortage or a neglect in certain areas. So there's always a niche product that you can focus on.
I love it. Build your niche product by finding your niche problem. We're here live with Frank Stronach. We're going to go to our dear friend, Frank Felico, who's deeply involved in the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, our dear friend.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah, he says, you look great, Frank. And Richard, you look good as always. Thank you, Frank. We appreciate the comments. We're delighted to hear that we capture well on film. But he asks a good question. He said, Frank, was there a time in your life that you thought you made a mistake that actually turned out to be a good decision? And was there a decision you wish you could take back? If so, why?
Well, the key is, as you go through life, there's always some tight spots, right? Or some complications, and you try to make it as least complicated as possible, right? Keep it simple. Try to keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you be with lawyers. If you get a thing here with 20 pages, say, look, bring it down to 5 pages, right?
I like
that. Okay, go to simplicity, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the key is one of the keys right on well is I kept factories. I did not allow factories to be more than 300 employees, right? Okay, why did I do that? Well, when you go over 300 employees, people become a number. Okay, and it doesn't work then, right? Because as an owner or the manager should know everybody of the. If you got 300 employees, you could know pretty well everybody, right? And they can't do if you have a large factory and you got a problem, you got a large problem, right? If you got a small factory, you got a problem, you got a small problem, right? And small problems are easier to solve than big problems, right? So I find you can do a lot of things with smaller companies, and you could unite them and direct them, and that together they could do large projects.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Thank you so much. And thanks for the answer. Thank you, Frank, for the question. I'm going to go to Eugenio Demira. He asked a great question, which I like to take a stab at, and then you could as well, Frank. He says, how do you plan to engage and build the high numbers needed to establish the New Wave Common Sense Business Association? And I mean, my first comment is that we're recognizing some really great momentum right now, Frank. We have begun to organize what we've come to call town hall meetings. We're meeting with small business owners, young and old. And what we're doing, Eugenio, is that we're getting people to get the opportunity of co-authoring the next steps. We're immersing them in the conversation. We're letting them co-author the direction so that they get to co-own and champion the cause. Because this isn't just Frank Stronach's vision for a better tomorrow for Canada and Canadians. It's for all of us and our children and our children's children. We'll be working with very large centers of influence, influencers that are digital, both young and old, those who are established across all social media handles that are getting very vocal and quite frankly passionate about the need to make a change in this country, to make it, dare I say, better again, Canadianly great, if I may. But Frank, what excites you about the growth curve that we're experiencing for New Wave? What's exciting you the most?
Well, it's when you grow, obviously you got to do something right, right? But I want to go back again, what stops the growth, right? Because we have more of a problem now stopping the growth, right? So when I take a look, anytime, when you assess your life, you got to say, those are my foremost problems, right? And if you're not gonna do anything, if you're not gonna eliminate the problem, you get deeper and deeper in the hole, right? So what are Canada's foremost problems, right? We are way, as I said early on, we have so many regulators, right? We got regulators which regulate regulators, right? So but I want to point out, it's got to be done in a civilized way. No pointing the fingers. It's the fault of this or that. Basically, it's the fault of all of us that we then a little more careful on politics or be more involved, etc., right? But the fact is, the politicians call it. They're locked in a system where they can't move. And that did not come overnight. Over the last 70 years, more and more bureaucrats, right, got imbalance, right? So basically now the politicians, they're strapped. They can't move, right? So the very important thing is, when I would look at the major problems, we are way overgoverned. The latest poll in bureaucracy was Canada has 100 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. The United States has 70 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. Japan has 40 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. So I think around 50, 60 years ago, maybe Canada had about 10 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. So the very key is we gotta reduce the bureaucracy, right? And but it's got to be done in a civilized way, right? For instance, we could lay off maybe 60% of our bureaucracy on the municipal level, the provincial level, and federal level. And we say we give them a pay package of 5 years where they get paid, right? Maybe 10% less every year. And if they find a job in the private sector, they get 50% of the outstanding what they would be entitled to, right?
Yeah.
So let's say a bureaucrat made $100,000 per year, right? After 2 years, he finds a job in the private sector. So he would still have close to $300,000 sitting there. So 50% would be approximately $150,000. He would get a bonus if he finds a job, right? So it's got to be very civilized, but we got to start, right? Because there's so many bureaucrats, they prevent that you can do things. We got to set small business free, right? So 50, 60 years ago, they operated under the free enterprise system, right? Free enterprise, without free enterprise, there's no free society, right? Okay, so we gotta reduce the bureaucracy in a civilized way. We gotta make sure the government officials and regular don't tie up small business. We gotta set small business free.
We do,
okay,
Frank. Yeah.
And we gotta have a black and white tax system, right? No more loopholes. If you make more money, you pay more taxes, right? So we gotta, those three are the thing. The government should not, it's got to set small business free. And most of all, we must have balanced purchase, right? We got to stop governments from printing all the monies, right?
I agree.
Because we're leaving an incredible mortgage for our young generation. The hole gets deeper and deeper. Let me give you just one example. Last week, like a government official got together, federal governments, provincial governments, and say, we got to help the municipalities because the building services are so expensive, and the building permits and so on. So we're going to help the municipalities. So what we're going to do? So we're going to print a few more billion, quite a few billion, and spread it around. So we did not go back. Why is such a high overhead? It's because we got so many bureaucrats, right? But again, I don't want to point on the thing here, right? So we gotta reduce, but it's gotta be done in a fair, civilized way, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay.
I agree, Frank.
And government officials, all the MPs should maybe take a pay cut of 10%, right? Because to a great extent, they were responsible to that our living standards are down. What do you think would happen if the living standards down every year? Because there's no question the living standards are down more than 50% over the last 50 years. What do you do with the thing, with the management team if it loses money for 50 years? Okay, so governments have to think hard about it, but again, it did not happen overnight. I knew most of the government. They like, Brian Mulroney was on our board, great guy. Mike Hare, great guy. But Bill Day, and liberals, and the president of Switzerland, president of Austria, the president of World, they were back. But the system doesn't work. We got to change the system. We got to set small business free. Okay, we gotta watch. We can't have the printing of money, so we gotta sit down in a civilized way. It's high time before it's too late.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying is it's amazing how an hour can go by, and we're about to close this conversation down. And I want to get to as many questions as we possibly can. But if you're just tuning in as a member of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, or you're just visiting Frank for the very first time, you will notice that he's incredibly passionate about the things that need to be fixed. This is a man that's got an obsession with problems. If he sees a problem, he can't help but want to fix it. And one of the things he definitely wants to fix is the way the economy works. And I don't just mean in Canada, but I do mean worldwide, because he feels like if a world works, everything will work. Frank, I'm going to move in lightning fashion here, okay? We're going to handle some last minute questions. We want to get to everybody, including our students who've taken the time to be here with you. But you should hear from Deanna Wilkinson, who says, thank you so much, Richard and Frank. So great to see all of you. Great advice. Thank you, Frank, for your insights. It's been a real pleasure learning from you. Deanna, you're more than welcome. Anthony, good to hear from you. How can you motivate, Frank, young people to work hard these days for a small business? Well, my advice would be to limit their Wi-Fi. You work hard, you get Wi-Fi access. work really well, you'll get consistent Wi-Fi access. I know that might went over your head, Frank, but what would you say to Anthony? How do we motivate young people today?
Well, basically, to everything, there's a reason, right? Canada got settled by so many immigrants, right? And they had a hard life. And basically, gee, I want to see that my kids have a better life. I want to see them being lawyers, financial people, etc., etc. So there is a void, huh? A void, right? Because there's no direction. It's an empty thing now, right? We, for instance, a farmer cannot grow food unless he gets seeds. Huh? A country cannot produce products unless we got skilled labor. Okay, we got to understand that. We totally neglected skilled labor. So for the last 40, 50 years, if there's a new building going up, it wasn't a factory where we make things. It's another warehouse. Yeah. We became a nation of warehouse operators. So again, I'm pleading over and over, we got to, the economy. Small business could revive the economy if you set them free. So that's the thing here. Yeah. Yes, we all to blame. Yes, politicians are to blame. Yes, but we can only solve it in a civilized way. So my advice to young people would be focus on the day to stay alive, but leave that open for tomorrow and follow your dreams.
I like that.
And be guided by your conscience.
Brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. Well done, Anthony. And by the way, I hope that answers your question. To add to it, Anthony, I would like to share this, that I really believe that the young generation are also in an era of instant gratification. After all, thanks to devices and whatnot, they instantly get the gratification for having been engaged or endured a game. So one of the things I would definitely say is this, is that there's a trust recession. You know, here at the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, we notice social trends and economic trends. We notice that there's a trust recession. Young people are far more informed now than ever before. They don't want to waste their time. So if you're able to show them a great track, give them clear
show
advice.
Them a great thing here.
Yeah.
Basically, you see, we got to realize all the food eaten in North America, 95% comes from industrial farms. In industrial farms, you see no more eagles fly. Why? Because there's no more rabbits. There's no more pheasants. We spray so much fungicide and pesticides. We poison everything. All our kids have allergies. Stage 2 diabetics is enormously on the rise. So basically, we have a major problem. So a country which could feed its people never had a problem. Canada never had a problem. We could feed its people. But now we have industrial farms and we have problems, right? In industrial farms, 95% of the food comes from industrial farms. And I'm saying it's full with pesticide and fungicide. But that also creates a problem. Our family farms are practically on welfare. Kids of family farmers say, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be in farming. I don't want to be in welfare. But we should have farming, grown food, should be the coolest thing. We got to have a marketing where we ignite our kids. Go into farming, we must have a family farm fund, right? It's not really a subsidy, but it's a saving of billions of dollars of medical costs, right? If we grow organic food, we could do it. We have so much bare land, right? We could feed the hungry and we could heal the sick, right? So, and we gotta get the thing, a great marketing program. For our young, get into the farming because you are what you eat. And the foremost doctor in the world, right, always said, let food be your medicine, and medicine is your food, huh? We could create a great healing. We could get the family farms are going, and we could give a direction what's cool for our young people.
I like your approach there, especially for the question that was asked, how do we motivate young people? Maybe one of the ways that you just spoke to was to inspire them to make farming cool again in some ways. And by the way, that could go to my dear friend Sisha Maharaj, who asked the question, how can Canada boost innovation to create value? What is working well that we can scale? And I think you kind of answered that question.
It's more business free.
Yeah.
No business tax. Let them be free. Let them make great things.
Yep.
Okay. Look, I'm waiting for 3 years now to get the permit for a farmer's market, right? And left and right, okay, from thing I see warehouse buildings gone up with store food and all thing of with 500,000 square feet, even 1 million. That's at the left and right, hundreds of them, right? And there I wanted to build a farmer's market, and I got a notice from the township. Look, it doesn't. Uh,
Comply.
Wait, the bylaws. It doesn't conform to the bylaws. I said, what's the bylaws? Well, it says our bylaws read we cannot have more than 3,000 square feet for farmers market, and you're asking for 5,000, right? I mean, it's stuff like that. It's beyond. Okay, and look, and we have hundreds of thousands, like over and over. Look, all the way along on the 447. It's just nothing but warehouse and warehouse and warehouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, speak. I mean, first of all, if you agree with Frank, and it's been frustrating to be an entrepreneur because of bureaucracy and all of the limitations you've got, just put a hell yes in the chat room. Just go in there. I want to see if you guys agree with the frustrations of this man who's employed over 180,000 people over his lifetime. And I mean, right there, look at that, Sharon. Oh, good to see you, Sharon. And look at that, we see Brenda and Christopher. A lot of people agreeing with you, Sisha. Good to see you, Tony, Mary B. Good to see you. I see you, Brad. I want to get a couple more in there. Taras, you asked a great question. We're going to change gears, get personal as we get closed up, okay? Taras asks, Frank, in fact, he asked Mr. Stronach, if you had any mentors, did you have any mentors going through life? Did you have early mentors, role models, people that you looked up to?
No, life is really a question of fate and circumstances, being at the right places at the right time with the right ingredients. Lots of things can happen. So I had maybe basically life. I've seen the highest of the high, the lowest of the low, and life is such on an everyday basis was my mentor, right?
I like that a lot. Sharon, I know that you are on the line. It's so good to have you here. I sure hope that you join the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship to continue learning from Frank as I have. And you asked a good question, which I think was already answered. You said that if you had to critique your own business model with today's economic and social realities, what would you say needs to evolve the most? I would say by making sure you're a part of a collective voice with other small business owners. So together, by banding together, you can hold government and your local officials accountable to making sure that the laws and the regulations and the bylaws work for you rather than you working for them. Would you agree, Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's so important to join the new wave common sense business association, right? Because politicians will listen. You know, if there is a demand and there's thousands of people wanted to see that. The politicians, in a democracy, the politicians decide, right? But again, it needs voting blocks, right?
You bet.
So the very key is a small business understand the economy. So our governments need advice when it comes to the economy because the economy doesn't function.
Yeah.
So we got to listen, right? The economy is straightforward in small business. Either you make a profit or you don't make a profit. Don't make a profit, you're not in business. So if you're not in business, you don't have to listen to them, right?
Yeah.
So you only listen to businesses which make a profit, right? Okay, so we got, if they band together, it's high time, right? And I think politicians really would be very happy if small business will come forward with such proposal for the simple reason, the politician, look, if we recommend to lay off bureaucrats, whoever does that will not be elected because there's so many bureaucrats. The only way which could out to the bureaucrats would be small business. Okay, and I still think about 2/3 of 20 or 30% of Canadians are really down solid. They get up in the morning, they work hard, they want to achieve things, they want to live in dignity, they want to help the family, and I guess 2/3 could become with an economic. First of all, the economic charter of rights would eliminate poverty. The economic charter of rights would lead the 2/3 of Canadians would be economically free. Let's face it, if you're not economically free, you're not a free person. And what do I mean by being economically free? When you make a statement, define it what it is. Economic freedom for, let's say, if a Canadian woman has worked for 30 years and a Canadian man has worked for 30 years, they should have enough accumulated that they own their own house or their condo. Might be a small one, mortgage free, and have at least $300,000 in the bank to subsidize their old age pension, and they can choose their own road to happiness for their remaining years. How many do you know which would be economic minimum of, it's a shame. We advanced so much in technology because we have regulation, we gotta reduce that. But again, we gotta be fair to them. It did not come overnight. It developed in a slow pace, and every Canadian's got the right to find a job wherever the openings are, right? Yeah. But the openings were created by the politicians, right? They got to be blamed the most, right? But again, I know them. They're basically decent. They want to do well, but when young politicians who get elected, they want to come in and say, look, I'm going to change things. The older politicians say, you can't say that. That's something new. Anything new, it can be criticized.
Yeah, no,
won't be elected.
No, I agree. And, I want to just read a couple of comments before we shut down for the night, because there's lots of people that need to get back to work, get back to families, get back to dinner, or perhaps get back to their days. Gary Morrison, good to hear your voice, my friend. He says here, as a alumni of Magna International, we built over 50 manufacturing plants in 4 years. We operated under Frank's concept we called the Magna Carta at the time. We were a team built to help each other and grow the Magna business. He went on to say, and we did that very quickly, he said, ask Frank for me, please, about the company circle concept. Do you remember that? The company circle concept? Not a pyramid that allowed us to call Frank directly if we had any issue, but Frank was always willing to help employees no matter what, whatever came up, no matter what it was, no matter what level, and that worked for Magna. He went on to say, good work, Frank. He looks forward to working with you again at Stronach Academy. Frank, do you remember the company circle?
Yes, I mean, I was known for that. I think every week I drew maybe 1,000 circles, right? So basically, you had one circle in the middle that was the head office, and then you had group head offices were a little larger circle, right, a little further away, and then each group head office had a lot of small circles. Those were the management. They call it the factories or the businesses. So basically, we had a system where the managers could run, because all those are very important things if you want to grow business or start with business. So a manager could run under the corporate umbrella when they saw an advantage, or could stay out when it was a disadvantage, right? Okay, so and the manager could not be fired. It could only be fired if they break the law or didn't make a profit for 2 years. Otherwise, a manager could not be fired. So it gave managers, their main thing was look after your own factory, look after your own employees. If you make a profit, you do well, you cannot be fired, right? So basically, the economy. So I also had managers come to me and say, Frank, I want to make some more money. So I said, that's nice to hear. That's not a problem. Or you make more money if you be smart. Well, they say you're stifling me. I can't have more than 300 employees. I said, you're not listening if you be smart. So basically I had to say, look, if you replace yourself as the manager, if you groomed yourself to be the manager, I get you a cut, an ongoing cut of the profits for the coming years. And I give it the monies to build a new factory, right? So I had managers replace themselves maybe 10 or 15 times. They made 10 million or 15 million a year, right? Because they were smart.
I love that. Speaking of smart, we've only got a few minutes left. And for some people on this phone call, for those who are dialed in, they're quite young. And one was, in fact, very brave to ask, if you were 18 years of age, Frank, 18 to 25, let's say, and you were bootstrapping a new company, what sort of business would you start today if you were that age?
I think there's so many people hungry now. I would start the food thing. It'd be low cost. You could always rent the thing here, get a shuttle, and grow things.
Mm,
Okay. So I think there is. I think people will become very aware. Look, we got to really watch what we eat. People have no idea how many chemicals they eat, right?
mm,
Okay. If I would have eaten chemicals maybe 50 years ago, right?
mhm.
Okay, I would look like maybe being just 30 years old.
You would, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm pretty shocked that none of our students was asking, like, how do you have a full head of hair, look so good, and have this kind of energy? Because I don't know about you folks at home watching, whether on an iPad or perhaps a device. I'm exhausted. And Frank can go on for another hour. The entire production crew here has been trying to stay awake because
I
they've been
thought this is just a warm up.
See my point? Frank, to the last question with Eamon Surtee, I love this question because it actually speaks to a little bit of the science and magic and your creativity and ingenuity as an entrepreneur. It was asked, what was the most challenging part in scaling your business? Because I know a big part of scaling Magna was likely decentralizing functions of it. What would you say is the challenging part of
Well,
scaling
the
a business?
challenges was when I go public, right? Yes, I was on the New York Stock Exchange on the corporate governance board, right? Yes, I learned a lot, but when I did went, that was something new, very complex laws, etc., etc. So it was challenging.
Mm. And I know that we've got time for one more, correct, Ivana? Because Ivana is the boss, quite frankly. Just a real big shout out of appreciation, folks. All together now, go in the chat room. We want to show some love for Stephen, Ivana, and Cynthia, the entire crew here that makes, and Mike, by the way. I did say Mike in my mind, not out loud, but the entire crew here for putting it together. But put some love in the chat room. Let them know that we appreciate them, their hard work, their dedication. They put in the long hours before we arrive. They make us look better than we deserve to, except for Frank, because he always looks good. That's true. So thank you so much, guys. Look at that. That's specifically to you, Mike, for the guy who got the last call out. Mike, Stephen, Ivana, and Cynthia. Frank, last question. It comes from Tony Furtado. Good to hear your voice, Tony. And this is a good question. You're going to like this one. How have you managed to keep your manufacturing services? And I don't know if he means like over time or including today, but let's assume today. How have you kept your manufacturing services competitive despite the growing influx of Chinese competitors?
Well, my focus was the human capital, right? What do I have to do that there's so much potential, right? Because the world came a long way from the caveman to the hunted to the kings and the servants, and now what we have is we have bosses and unhappy employees, right?
Yeah.
So basically, every day I went to work, I asked myself, what do I have to do that workers respect me? Okay, we have perhaps the most advanced human resource charter, right? Okay, because 1/3 of our labor force were women, so we had over 60,000 women employed, right? So so it was always you can only grow, right? If the workers are happy. If they're happy, then the output is great, right?
Right.
The product is great. You make the profits, and especially if they share in the profits, you release an energy of untold proportions, right? They're in the front line, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the very key is to challenge the employees for you can make more monies, right? If you think, right, there's a better way. There's always a better way of making things, right?
There's a better way.
So the human capital is the most important thing, yeah. And so I think we could compete with the Chinese, right?
Absolutely.
But then when the bureaucracy started to climb like crazy, right? Because basically they just stopped the economic train. Okay. So we got to get the economic drain going again, right?
I hear you.
We got to reduce that in a civilized way. And I'm saying not that it's totally their fault, right? It's the system's fault, right?
Understood.
And the system for our school system, we don't teach kids to be free, right? To be have your own business and do something, right? We're not teaching that, right? We got to teach kids how to be free and how the economy works, because it doesn't matter, right? You know, we had factories in 34 different countries. The one thing all the workers understand, didn't matter what country we're in, they understood profits. They understood the economy. So we got to get the economy. And let small business be part of it, because they understand the economy. If small business does well, the whole country do well. So let's join up, right? For your own sake, for your kids' sake, and for this Canada is such a great country. I have no agenda. I just felt the wisdom I've accumulated, the way to do things. I want to see that. I want to see that transferred to the younger Canadians, right? So again, I thank you that a chance to listen, and I listened, and I think we're civilized. We can do it, but we gotta get off the thing. We gotta. Time is running out. The hole is getting bigger and bigger. You know, where we print monies, right? So we gotta. We could do it if you get going. Small business, the new wave of common sense business has joined that, right? Together you can save the country, and together you'll be recorded in the books of history by making a contribution to a great country. I want to see Canada being the first country in the world with an economic charter of rights.
I love it.
And the basic principle of the economic charter of rights is it would eliminate poverty, and it would have more than 2/3 would be economically free. They would do so well they could look after the other 1/3, which for one reason the other has bad luck or mishaps, etc. And we could reduce it down, maybe down the road to maybe 5 or 10%. So the economic charter will that we would lower the divide. It would improve the living standards of the working class, and that's what it's all about. We got it. The divide is just too big, right? Okay.
I love it. I love it that it's the economic charter of rights and responsibilities. Frank, for this evening, for all that you've done for the past hour and now a bit, we apologize for the students and those who've joined us. We apologize for running over, but as you can clearly tell, Frank is just passionate about being a contribution, providing you. Frank, on behalf of our students, on behalf of our friends, those who've joined us for the first time and likely coming into the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship for next month, we thank you. Thank you for your time, your contribution, your history, but your willingness to share and your willingness to sit here and to teach and to equally learn. I thank you on behalf of all those that attended.
Okay, thank you. I enjoy it to have the chance to do that.
Absolutely.
It's a great country.
It is a great country. And by the way, and you're a great entrepreneur, whether you're a small business owner of one, whether you've got a small team of 12, whether you've got your sights set on doing what Frank Stronach has done, and you want a business of 300 staff and more, whether you want to decentralize the business and scale worldwide and have global domination, the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship is here for you. If you want to learn more on how to be a student, a member, a part of the community, or even just join the conversation, please hit the link located in the chat room right there. If you want to join the conversation, the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, which is a movement and it needs you, then by all means, we welcome you to sign the pledge and join the cause. Hit the link also in the chat room. But for here at Stronach International with my dear friend Frank Stronach, we thank you for being here and joining us. Until next time, I'm Richard Dolan with Frank Stronach on the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, starting with you.